Elijah Black was born into a quiet suburban home where the lights always stayed on, the hedges were neatly trimmed, and the appearance of a happy family was never disturbed. But inside the walls of 1139 Maplewood Lane, Elijah always knew he didn't belong. His parents, Martha and Henry Black, were the picture of upper-middle-class respectability. Henry worked as a mid-level bank manager, and Martha stayed home to keep the house in order. Their daughter Juliet was the golden child. She was bright, beautiful, and manipulative, in a way only the favorite child of neglectful parents could be. Elijah, on the other hand, was quieter, always lost in books, numbers, and dreams that reached too far for a family that wanted to stay small. From the age of 8, Elijah noticed the difference. When he won the regional science fair, his parents forgot to show up. When Juliet got 3rd place in a spelling bee, there was a dinner at her favorite restaurant and a photo in the local newspaper. An ad space Henry had paid for himself. By the time Elijah was 16, he had learned to hide his pain behind silence. But he was clever, too clever to be ignored by life forever. It all came to a breaking point the summer before his high school graduation. One night, Juliet wrecked the family car while driving drunk. Elijah took the fall. His parents didn't ask questions. They kicked him out the next morning, calling him reckless, a disgrace, and worse. With nothing but a backpack, $312, and his old laptop, Elijah walked away from the house that never felt like home. He vanished. At first, no one in town knew where he'd gone. There were rumors he was homeless in New York, or dead in a ditch. The truth was more complicated. Elijah couch-surfed, worked 3 jobs, and never stopped reading. He studied at public libraries, snuck into lectures, and learned how the world moved. Money, markets, tech, power. By 22, he'd taught himself enough code to land a job at a mid-sized startup. By 25, he'd built his own platform. At 27, he sold it for $80 million. But Elijah didn't stop there. Over the next decade, he became a ghost billionaire, one of those nameless figures behind shell companies, real estate empires, and silent tech acquisitions. He avoided the spotlight, moved quietly through life, and built something that couldn't be taken from him. He married a woman named Aria, a fierce, brilliant woman who saw through his silence and knew how to match it with her own kind of fire. Together, they had 3 children, Leo, Mara, and little Josie. He gave them the life he never had, filled with love, not just luxury. Then one day, more than 15 years after he'd left, Elijah received a wedding invitation. Juliet was getting married. The envelope was addressed to Mr. Elijah Black and guest. Not because they wanted him there, because she wanted to show off. He stared at the invitation for a long time. Aria watched him. "You want to go?" she said softly. Not a question, a knowing. Elijah nodded. "I think it's time." The return was cinematic. They pulled up to the estate where the wedding was held, one of Elijah's own properties, though Juliet didn't know that. It had been rented through 3 different management companies. He never let the world see the hand pulling the strings. Juliet didn't recognize him at first. He'd changed, taller, broader, dressed in black with quiet power, not trying to be seen, but impossible to miss. Then she saw his wife, then the kids, then the Rolls-Royce. "Elijah," she stammered, eyes wide, voice caught somewhere between shock and suspicion. He smiled politely. "Congratulations, Jules." Their parents approached, slower, older, more brittle than he remembered. His father's jaw slackened. "Elijah, where have you?" "Everywhere," he said smoothly. "I've been everywhere." They pulled him aside. They asked the questions that should have been asked 2 decades ago. They talked of misunderstandings, of how things got out of hand, of how "we always hoped you'd come back." Elijah said nothing. Later during the reception, he stood at the edge of the garden watching the lights. A young waiter nervously approached. "Excuse me, sir. The owner of the estate asked for you. He'd like a word." Elijah turned, amused. "I am the owner." The boy blinked. "Oh, my apologies, sir." Elijah smiled gently. "No need. You didn't know. Most people don't." The boy nodded and left. Moments later, Juliet approached. "What are you doing here?" she asked, tension behind her voice. He looked at her, calm and clear. "You invited me." Why now? She asked. Why show up now? He turned toward the house, then toward the family that had once thrown him away. To remind you, he said, that some things don't stay broken. They build themselves in silence and come back stronger than you ever imagined. And with that, Elijah Black, the billionaire nobody saw coming, walked back to his wife and children. It had been 6 months since Elijah Black walked into his sister's wedding and left a storm behind him. The whispers didn't stop. In the town of Greystone, people suddenly remembered the quiet boy who used to sit alone at lunch. They remembered how his parents kicked him out, how no one knew where he went. Now he was back, with a stunning wife, beautiful kids, and a presence that felt like gravity. What they didn't know? That was the best part. Elijah hadn't just returned for closure. He returned for the long game. See, Greystone was a town built on secrets, old money, land that traded hands behind closed doors, quiet corruption, tucked into friendly smiles and country club handshakes. What Elijah had learned in his years away was simple. Power doesn't announce itself. It just moves things. And he was ready to move Greystone. The Black Empire moves in. 2 weeks after the wedding, a development company called Eben Properties purchased the failing Greystone Mall. Then they bought up the industrial park. Next, the country club's debt mysteriously came due, and Eben acquired it through a holding company. People started asking questions. Elijah, Juliet called one night, did you have anything to do with these buyouts? He sipped tea in silence. That would be inappropriate. She didn't believe him. He didn't care. What Juliet didn't know was that Elijah was Eben Properties, and through a web of silent investors and buried contracts, he now owned nearly a third of the town. The family tried to ignore it, but when Henry, Elijah's father, was laid off from the bank in a sudden restructuring, and the new owners declined to rehire him, they started connecting dots. One night, his mother, Martha, came to his estate unannounced. Elijah, she said, standing at the gate, we need to talk. He met her at the drive, calm as ever. You were always different, she said. Quiet, hard to understand. But you didn't deserve what we did to you. He let her speak. She apologized, real tears, shaky hands. She asked to see her grandchildren. Elijah didn't raise his voice, didn't gloat. He just said, maybe one day, but not yet. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you owe. It's a door you open when you're ready. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A letter arrived, not to Elijah, but to Juliet. It was from an attorney in New York. The will of one Emmett Langston, a billionaire tech magnate who had quietly died a year earlier, had just been unsealed. He'd left a personal note, written by hand. To Elijah Black, the only man in my life I trusted enough to call a son. Juliet's mouth went dry. Emmett Langston was Elijah's mentor, the one who gave him his first investment. And now the world knew. Articles dropped, blogs exploded, headlines read, The Quiet Rise of Elijah Black, Billionaire Tech Ghost Revealed. Now everyone knew. The town tried to rally around him. The same neighbors who ignored him as a kid now invited him to speak at luncheons. The mayor offered him a seat on the city planning board. Local news called him Greystone's prodigal son. Elijah smiled, attended nothing, and kept building. It was Leo's 10th birthday, his oldest son. They threw a party in the estate's garden. Aria laughed with friends. The kids played soccer, and Elijah stood by the grill, quiet, present, whole. Then Juliet arrived. She came alone, no makeup, no mask, just herself. Elijah didn't tell her to leave. She sat beside him at the fire pit later, long after the others had gone. I used to be jealous of you, she admitted, because you were free. You had this quiet strength, and it made me feel small. He didn't respond, just looked at the flames. I don't want your money, she said. I just want my brother back. Elijah turned to her, his eyes still that same calm storm. You had him, he said. Once. Then he stood, kissed his kids goodnight, and walked back into the life he'd built from ashes. 3 years later, Greystone had moved on. Elijah's influence now stretched far beyond town lines. His ventures funded schools, clean energy projects, scholarships for kids like him, the quiet ones, forgotten in the noise. But not everyone had moved on. Juliet Black was still in Greystone. She lived in a modest apartment above a bookstore, working part-time as a community event planner. The once golden girl was now a ghost in her own story. Most people pitied her. Some laughed behind her back. But Elijah, he didn't speak of her at all. One rainy afternoon, Elijah received a handwritten envelope with no return address. Inside, "Dear Elijah, there's no way to rewrite the past. No defense for who I was. I burned bridges you tried to build, and I blamed you for the fire. But if you can spare 1 hour, I'd like to show you who I'm trying to become. I'll be at the old greenhouse at 3 p.m. this Sunday. No cameras, no lawyers, just me." Juliet. Elijah didn't tell anyone. He just showed up. The meeting. The greenhouse had been abandoned for decades, but someone had cleaned it up. Glass panels repaired, ivy trimmed. Inside, potted flowers bloomed in uneven rows, fragile but growing. Juliet stood there, wearing jeans and dirt-stained gloves. No makeup, no mask. "I've been restoring this place," she said softly. "Got a grant from the town council. I volunteer with kids on weekends. We teach them how to plant things. Watch them grow." Elijah said nothing, just watched. "I don't want anything," she continued. "I just wanted you to see it. I didn't know what healing looked like until I started digging in the dirt. You can't fake growth in soil. It either lives or it doesn't." He looked around. "You built something," he said at last. She nodded. "It's not much." "It doesn't have to be," he replied. A long silence. Then Juliet reached into her bag and pulled out a small black notebook. "This was Dad's," she said. "His journal. I found it when they downsized. Thought you should have it." Elijah hesitated, then took it. The cover was cracked. Inside were notes, lists, and a photo. 2 kids on a swing set, one laughing, the other, Elijah, staring off at the sky. "I used to be so angry at you," Juliet said, "because you were always different. And now I see." "That was the point." She offered a weak smile. Elijah closed the book. "I don't know what this means," he said honestly, "but thank you." She nodded. "It doesn't have to mean anything yet." Weeks later, Aria found Elijah in his office sketching something. "What's that?" she asked. He showed her. A blueprint. The Black Veil Foundation, Center for Innovation and Healing, a community greenhouse, STEM lab therapy rooms, open to all, named not for legacy, but for possibility, funded by Elijah, run by Juliet. Because sometimes redemption isn't loud. It's not a headline. It's not a courtroom win. Sometimes it's 2 people, finally pulling the same rope in the same direction and choosing to grow.